Hello and welcome to Glass Half Full Reviews, Game of Thrones Review Edition. And this is my little reviewing dragon partner. He doesn't say anything and he doesn't do anything, which makes him a perfect fan of this show. Today I'm going to be reviewing the latest episode of Game of Thrones, The Laws of Gods and Men, and I hope I got that right. Today, instead of the classic, I'm just going to spew for 20 or 30 minutes about this episode, I'm going to restrict it. I'm actually going to prevent myself from talking too long. Today what I'm going to do is actually give myself a time limit. I'm going to give myself 3 minutes for the first subplot, 3 minutes for the second, 5 for the last, and another 3 to wrap it all up. And let's see if I can pull this off. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so the first subplot has to do with the Iron Bank for the first time seen on this show, plus Stannis and Davos trying to get a loan. One of the things that's really interesting about this is it's a pretty extreme departure from the book. I wouldn't call it as much as some other things we've seen, but it is pretty significant. Now, I've never said, it has to be 100% the way the book is, or else, whatever, I'm done with the show. There are plenty of other things that, if they had happened, I would have been done. None of those things have happened by now. Most of those things have to do with Hodor, and I'm just glad that they haven't killed him off yet. So, continuing on, I really found this very interesting because we got to see an actual reasonable justification for this kind of divergence. We needed to give more stuff for Stannis and Davos to do that really showed why Stannis might actually be a decent ruler, maybe, and why Davos, A, was devoted to him, and B, was actually a good spokesperson for him. I actually really liked that. It was interesting to see the Iron Bank show up, although again it was very typical, a bunch of white guys with British accents. I guess that's how they all sound, although if we've seen people from Bravos before, I'm pretty sure we heard different sorts of accents, and because of that, I was a little disappointed by the actual choices made. I don't know if they were directing or acting, but I didn't quite think that they were the way I would have envisioned the Bravos accent in my mind. I did like seeing, of course, Salladhor Saan again. It was nice to see him, even though, of course, it was another excuse to throw a lot of nudity in our faces, and do not mean that literally. And I did like to see that because he was such an interesting character, and we don't get to see a lot of that other type of thing, the remnants of Davos's criminal past. But I think this segment actually worked really well. I would tend to think that maybe the Iron Bank is a little confusing, and the whole way that last episode that Tywin was essentially saying they were out of money, which is not how it happens in the book, maybe that's going to play out in a little bit different way. In the books it's a little bit different, but I think it's going to end up being very similar. At least that's my thoughts on the subject. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to end up. Alright, so I think that I would give this segment a yes, it worked. Okay, I managed to get that one in under 3 minutes. Let's try the next one. Okay, this next scene I had a little bit more of a problem with. Although it was nice to see Yara, or, well, she's called Asha in the books, but whatever. I think that it was nice to see her because it's nice to see more of her in general, because we haven't seen anything from her in a while. In general, I've often thought that the Theon plot lines in the show have been too much. There's been too much Theon, and I think a little bit of the less is more, no pun intended, are really going to be better suited for this type of thing. I like to see a lot of the performances. I think they're all great, and Ramsay's a great sociopath, and Theon was great in this sort of the broken down role, trying to feel like he was actually connected to someone, having this new, role that he subsumed into himself. I'm not sure how it's going to end up, but I can see this going in a way that might be interesting for Theon, either as a triumphant way or a really negative way. It really could go either way. I'm not sure how the show's going to take it. I know how it is in the books, but really that's just one possibility. I thought it was interesting that we saw such, reasonable sexual experiences from Ramsay, considering, he's kind of a sadist and he's kind of a masochist. So I'm not really sure exactly what was going on there, but I guess it's okay to give him a little bit more of a fleshed out perspective, because otherwise he's a little simplistic. So I give this plotline a, I like where they are now, but I didn't like how long it took to get here. Alright, this is tough. Alright, one more subplot to go. Let's do it. Finally, we get back to King's Landing for the extended series of scenes, and this whole sequence was just extremely well done. I thought the trial was amazing. It was excellent just to see all the different acting. And even if it's a little unrealistic that all the characters have such perfect memory of all the lines that were spoken, I like the way they showed off these specific things because that's the ones that we've seen in the show. The truth is, I'm not even sure that everyone even remembers all the stuff of Sir Meryn Trant. I was watching it with someone who hadn't read any of the books, and he didn't even remember all the characters. For me, the funniest part of the episode is, of course, when Grandmaster Pycelle was opining on the loveliness and beauty and just overall wondrousness of Joffrey, and that was a good laugh. And sometimes you need that because of how serious the scene was, even if it was patently ridiculous and showed exactly what Pycelle was doing. And, you got to see him shaking his hands in the exaggerated way, which I don't know is ever going to really pay off other than just sort of the extended long con that he seems to be doing. Now, of course, Tyrion's performance, I was very impressed by that. I'm not really sure where the show is going to be going with him versus Shae. Like, is Shae's performance entirely an act? It doesn't seem like it. It seems at least some of it is probably honest. I'm not sure exactly how much, and I don't want to look at the books for this kind of thing, because at this point, she's been characterized very differently, so I don't think it's fair to make that kind of judgment. In general, though, this is some of the best acting I think we've seen from her. Obviously, it's just amazing to see Peter Dinklage in this role, and I think it was interesting because I was trying to decide, and I'm not sure, his reaction to his father at the end, demanding the trial by combat. Sure, we see shades of this from back in the first season, where he does essentially the same thing to prevent himself from getting killed when he's, in the area with Lysa and the rest of her bunch. And, of course, Bronn saves him. Could Bronn come back and save him now? Well, possibly, if he's not complicit in something already. Of course, we haven't seen anything from him, which is suspicious. But really, there's only two options for why Tyrion said what he did. Either he said it because of emotion, or he said it because of reason. Either he was thinking, and I think there was a little bit of this, because we saw the way he was looking, that maybe he was thinking, this is it. I know what's going on here. What Jaime just told me. I know this is all part of his plan, and I just don't want it to happen. I want to screw him over. This is the only way I can. That's one possibility. Of course, the other possibility is that he was just so hurt, so furious, that he just said, screw it. I'm just going to erupt. I'm going to get out there. This segment was, you have to watch. It's just superb. And of course, it was great seeing all the other supporting characters, the vindictiveness of Cersei, the sort of waveringness of Jaime, and you don't have to get into all of his history, but I think that the show is doing a pretty good job at this point of painting him in this kind of complicated light. Of course, well, Oberyn, he's definitely the best new character of the season, although there's not many other options. So, I got it in under the wire, so let's talk about my little wrap-up. In general, I really did like this episode. I thought it was very strong. It's only problematic for me from the Theon storyline just because of how much time has been spent on this in other seasons. The truth is, here, I think it really worked well. I think it made perfect sense, and it was a great setup for what things might happen next. I also really like what they did with Stannis and Davos. Davos is a character that I really like, and I think he's acted well, and I think he's actually written pretty well, too. So, that stuff I liked. Love seeing the stuff, obviously, with Tyrion and all the different stuff in King's Landing with Oberyn and Varys. I think it was really interesting to see all the different sort of congruent themes here, and how everything was sort of tying together in different ways. And of course, now that I'm speaking, I realize I entirely missed the Daenerys thing, because I'm so forgetful. Anyway, I like the Daenerys storyline, and it's another example of how different types of justice might be served. We obviously see different shades of that over the course of it. Yara is trying to have a kind of revenge-based justice. Daenerys has this she's trying to be moral, but obviously it's very complicated for her. Of course, Stannis and Davos, it's really more about their own perspectives on morality, but a lot of it is about loyalty for Davos. He really believes in Stannis. And of course, in the King's Landing thing, we have two aspects of it, the theoretical justice and, the kangaroo court of it. All right. I think I managed to get through all the themes, at least the primary ones. Don't really have time to break into a complete analysis by now, but I really like this episode. Can't wait to see what they do next. Thanks for stopping by.